Today is Tuesday, May 27th, and you're listening to the Beer Temple Podcast.
Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember, this is what we wanted. Remember, this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.
Hello, and welcome to the Beer Temple Podcast. I am your co-host for the day, Mike Shalau of Is Was Brewing, here with the other co-host, Chris Quinn. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Do you think people already know by this point that Surge is here?
Yeah, they have to.
Yeah, just
right?
from the fade.
That fade was sick.
That fade was sick.
Yeah. The best fade I've heard in months.
Yeah. That's, yeah, so I'm doing well.
Good.
We ran out of pizza yesterday, had to close early, and
The feds came and ate it all.
the feds came today. They came over the weekend, too.
Yeah.
And today we only had enough dough to make it through lunch. So,
Those are one of those good problems to have as people who don't own businesses say to you.
but like not being open, like missing a whole dinner shift. It is a Tuesday after Memorial Day, but not ideal. A
Yeah.
problem, but a good problem. But
Sure.
it's yeah, we got our little butts.
Spanked.
Yeah,
That's what'll happen when you do good things.
yeah. People still tend to complain enough. about that, but
Yep.
Pizza's too expensive, I guess. I don't know. Anyway,
Then don't buy it. You
Right,
know? That's
exactly.
one of the things about now. It's
They-
like, this is all opt-in, you know? You chose to come here. I don't
Right.
know what to,
well, I
don't know
think
what to tell you.
mostly it's internet
could-
complaining.
Sure. Cool.
So we'll see.
Nothing like people who have never owned businesses complaining about people running businesses.
Right.
My favorite.
But more interestingly,
Mm-hmm.
how have you been?
I'm okay. Got back from my honeymoon about a week ago.
Where'd you go?
We went to Dublin, Glasgow, Edinburgh, Scotland, Edinburgh. I'm still not sure how to say it, to be honest. London and Cardiff.
Where's Cardiff?
Cardiff is in Wales. I just had never been.
Oh.
I wanted to see what Wales was like, but we were only there for like less than a day, and we were just in the city. We didn't see.
Heard
Like,
it's pretty
shore.
gritty, pretty working class there.
I mean, we didn't make it too far outside of like kind of the downtown area, and like their castle is like basically downtown.
Got it.
So we went and we're like, oh, we'll go to the castle, and we thought we would be like outside of the city a little bit, and it's like, no, it's downtown. And
Well, that's kind of how it worked, right? Didn't they build the towns around the castle?
yeah, I guess they did. But I was thinking like Cardiff, you see like the cliffs of Dover type stuff, and like we didn't go to that part of Wales. We went to like the gritty part where you went to the castle, and they're like talking about how it's like a more recent castle because it's built from the people that had the rights, the mineral rights to the land, just cranking coal and other like goods out of it. And Cardiff is essentially like where they built the port to ship all that stuff out.
Got it.
And so you go through this whole tour of this castle that really like the living quarters is from like the 1800s rather than like the 1500s or whatever like the Edinburgh castle was. And then at the end, there's pictures of like guys in like race cars and like, and you're like, and this is like the heir now, who is a very famous Formula One driver, and they talk about how like, the government took their rights, the mineral rights, and they only had about $500 million from it. So you get really sad for the Dumfries.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's a shame.
yeah.
So now I'm trying to make it back by racing Formula One.
No, I don't. I think Formula One is a lot like having a brewery where the best way to make money is to already have money and then you just lose money doing it.
Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah.
Best way to become a millionaire in Formula One is to start out a billionaire.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
What was your best beer that you had there?
Ooh, that's a good question. So there's just top one, just number one beer. I finally got to have Harvey's best bitter on cask, like unpasteurized, and it was, sorry, amazing. It was like really cool. It was super nuanced and layered in a way that like most of those English beers aren't. It's been something I've been wanting to try for literally years because I've heard stories about how it's basically a mixed culture beer, like an English style mixed culture beer that is like more like what things would have been made like before Louis Pasteur ruined everything.
Fixed everything.
I think that was an interesting setting because we went to this place that I thought would be like a sleepy pub. By
Queen's Arms. Wasn't that what it was called?
Yeah, it was the Queen's Arms. Oh, yeah, we talked about this. But it's right by Royal Albert Hall, which is like a huge music venue, and Arcade Fire was playing that night. So it was just like packed, and people were spilling out into the street, which was awesome. But my wife and I were just appalled by people just leaving their glasses in this like in the street and in the alley and not bringing them back up to the bar. We were just like, our Midwestern souls were like, how could you not help them and bring it back up to the bar before you leave? And you're all breaking, the glasses are breaking on the ground. What is this? And then I brought my glasses back up to the bar, and they just like stacked them up and didn't even bother cleaning them. So I'm like, all right, this is, both sides are not doing it the way that I'm accustomed to. But they had that and Timothy Taylor Landlord on cask.
How was that?
At one point I was double fisting a Landlord and a Harvey's Best. Craft beer not really that big of a thing over most of that part of the world, at least the way that we think of craft beer. They have flavorful beer, but like craft beer is not quite as robust of a culture as it is here. And when it is, what I observed, like it's mostly kind of like American inspired brewing, where there's like, we went to one craft beer specific bar in London that had 4 different hazy IPAs called Soup from a Spanish brewery that are supposed to be really good. But now I look back and I wish I would have had it to be able to like talk about it. But the last thing I wanted was a hazy IPA.
Right.
So I got like things we probably could have gotten at like the local pub that they had on cask. And we did go to the Colonel, and the Colonel was awesome. The Colonel was super cool, making things with like Pacific Northwest hops that taste like they're from here in the best way possible. They had mixed culture saisons that were a little more sour than I would typically love, but like were delicious and had like hops that like, I had a Sabro mixed culture saison that was incredible, and I don't particularly care for Sabro. And then they have a whole series of like historic English, like London-specific beers, and it's mostly dark beers. So I had a vatted porter.
The Colonel is... I'm surprised that you didn't say the Colonel was your favorite beer. Although, I mean, getting a Harvey's and getting a Landlord's pretty insane.
Yeah. After the Harvey's, that was my favorite. That was by far my favorite craft beer experience, like not even close. And then the brewer happened to be sitting at the bar, and I had given my card to the bartender, and so he came over and talked to me. And like, it's someone who like, I go down rabbit holes about like things, and I'm like, this place seems mythical. Like it's underneath like the train tracks, and they're making these crazy beer. They're making saison. They're making, table beer and blah blah blah. And so I like knew what he looked like, and I did the thing where like I come back from the bathroom. He wasn't sitting at the bar when I went to the bathroom. I sit next to my wife. I'm like, oh, that's heaven. And then he looks at me and makes eye contact. And I'm like, oh. And then he's like, no, like I'm coming to talk to you. I'm like, whoa, cool. And I don't nerd out about things like that very often, but that was one where I'm like, I'm in a different country, and I never like this person was like a myth to me.
Wow. Yeah, he's a very nice guy.
Super nice.
I've met him last time I was out there, because I was there with Mike Siegel, and I guess they pal around a little bit.
He brought up John Laffler as someone he knows from Chicago. It's like,
of course, he kind of reminds me of John.
They
Laffler,
have a
that
similar
guy.
vibe. Yeah, they could both be in like the beer remake of Pirates of the Caribbean together.
Yeah, him and the guy from Forest and Maine too. And Ron
Damn.
Ron Jeffries,
Rest in peace.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah, he'd be the ghost.
Yeah. Right. And you and I, well, let's introduce our guest, because he might want to get in
Bring
on
him
this.
to the fold.
Yeah. So our guest, it's been a while.
Been a while.
It's beer writer extraordinaire, Mr. Josh Noel. What's up, man?
What's up, fellas?
How you been?
Nice to be back.
Yeah.
I've been good these last 4 years. It's nice to see you again.
Has it been 4 years?
No,
Yeah,
there's no
I think the
way.
last time I was on the program was 21.
To talk.
We were coming.
Didn't we do an episode about your book?
Yeah.
No, the last book came out in 2018.
Yeah,
so
but
yeah, we did an episode.
We didn't do it in 2018 though.
No, we
That was
did.
before we were doing book club.
I don't know.
We didn't start book club until after the pandemic.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't-
Whatever.
I don't think. Well,
None of us
we're doing
remember.
one on this book.
Yes.
Sorry.
So before
Anyway,
we get
nice to
into
see you.
that,
So
it
I
is nice
have
to
I have
see you.
two things to say.
And then I have a
I've
thing
been
to say,
I've
too,
been
and I want
sitting
you-
on my
Yeah.
hands and biting my tongue.
Yeah.
First of all, Arcade Fire is big enough to fill the Royal Albert Hall. People still care about them.
Yeah.
Wow.
In
Okay.
England liked them.
And I did look at the pizza menu today online. They are expensive.
No, they're properly priced.
Well, I'm not saying they're too expensive. I'm just saying whoa, $33 pizza. And I'm sure they're delicious.
They're big. They're Detroit style. There's a lot of dough involved, and Chris will
Hey,
be
dough
off his
ain't
phone
cheap.
to
I
defend
understand.
his pricing.
I
I'm
in
trying
1
to do.
second.
I'm working actually. Our next conversation is going to come out. I'm trying to get some intel
Okay.
for us. Yes, but I totally didn't hear what you just said.
You said your pizzas are too expensive.
No. I said your pizzas are expensive. I didn't say too expensive. I'm sure they're
Yes.
worth every penny.
Yeah, they're big. They're like a equivalent of like a large deep dish, I'd say. So they're like for like 3 to 4 people.
Okay. That's very fair.
Probably 3. Yeah, 3 to 4.
Slices are $6, right?
$9.
$9. I looked. I've just inverted.
Yeah.
If someone sees the price online and sends you a nasty email, I understand where they're coming from, but they
Right.
need to understand where you're coming from. Is what I'm
Right.
saying. So I'm just saying, let's all get on the same page, the same pizza page here, folks.
I
So
hope
if
the
3
that listen to
people
this
went
show are
in,
the ones sending
3
me
people went
emails.
in on a pizza and spent, let's say, $31
Yeah.
each, or let's say $33 each because it's easier. That's $11 each, and they're full. I think I think to me that seems like fair.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I haven't had it. I was going to have some tonight, but
No,
but it's gone
can't.
as
It's
we
gone.
discussed.
They heard
or
you
you
were coming
discussed.
and the feds
I'm
didn't
coming
know.
back.
Yeah.
I'm coming back.
Good.
I'm going to eat the pizza. I'm going to spend the money. So
And
I'm
then
not. I'm
and then
happy
tell me
to-
if you think it was. Most people who have it, they don't typically complain about it once they've had it.
So
Who's
that's
complaining about it after they had
everyone
it?
just wants value, right?
Other
They just
than
me.
people will pay
Which I
the
think
$33 for a damn
We
good
do
pizza.
give value because other places that they compare us to have an 8x10 pizza. We have a 10x14 pizza.
Oh yeah,
So
It's more. Those are both bigger numbers.
yes.
right.
Your mathing is
Big math
off
guy.
off the charts.
I can count to 4. I went
But
to music
good
school,
luck
man.
trying to explain that to somebody on a Reddit thread. Be like, okay, what we've really thought about being like, okay, fine, you win, we'll charge you more, and going to a smaller pizza and dropping it a few bucks and making more money.
Are
Like,
people
maybe-
really
we maybe
complaining
should.
that much? Your sales seem to be fine because you're
Yeah.
out of pizza, so I don't think you need to be worrying about
True.
this.
Why don't you guys talk for a minute while I text this gentleman one more time because I want to
what
get some
texting
information.
about? What are you doing there?
I'm texting somebody about Guinness.
Oh,
Oh, God. I told Chris I have some takes on Guinness that have been substantiated by people that I trust, and he doesn't believe me.
let's hear it. Or has this already been discussed on the show?
It hasn't.
I don't think it has.
And you said you talked to the former head of operations at this place?
I don't know if she was the head of operations, but
Okay.
she was deep into the operations and opening and setting up and establishing their breweries.
Got it.
Including the one here, you mean?
She was gone by the time they opened this one, but
So Baltimore.
Baltimore probably. She worked for Diageo for about 15 years, I think, specifically commissioning Guinness production facilities. And I met her while in China while she was consulting for a friend of mine who was opening a very large brewery there. And we talked about how Guinness, as it goes through production, is mostly a pale beer until very close to the end of production, where they add the Guinness essence that they make. Like, it's not like they're like calling up BSG and getting Cinema or something.
They definitely do that in other parts of the world. I think that's like a known thing. But you're saying specifically in Dublin they do this too.
I think it's the way that they make all of it.
Sure.
You're saying they add color at the end?
So they're roasting their own barley. They're making the essence, but yes, it's dosed at the end rather than being mashed in.
Dosed with color at the end.
Dosed with a essence, a thing that they make,
that
like a syrup
gives
or
aroma and
aroma,
color,
flavor, color, tang.
We should just have Mike Siegel call in right now. That's who I've been texting.
Just hold it up to the phone.
Right, to the mic. Yeah.
He works for the competition, though.
Yes, he does. But he has, he is a beer history buff.
Yeah.
And he gave me the best book on Guinness that I've ever read from a former brewer who had been there forever. But it is a little older. And he seems to think that isn't how they make Guinness, but Mike seems to think that is how they make Guinness and seems to be very certain of it.
I'm just saying, like, I'm sure Mike Siegel had a great talk with some people. This person worked for Guinness building their breweries.
Sure.
So I would guess that she has an understanding of the production process of Guinness that on a level that Mike might not. No offense to Mike. I know Mike knows a lot about these things, and I'm sure he has great friends.
He says he knows the U.S. brewmaster, but he's sure he's sworn to secrecy, which makes me think this person would also have been sworn to secrecy, but I don't know.
I'm sure they're all sworn to secrecy, but when
right, one's just a big blabbermouth.
But when you're like, yeah, right, when you no longer work for them and you're in China,
the U.S. brewmaster would, you'd think, be in a position to know.
You don't think the U.S. brewmaster, who's currently employed by Guinness, has an NDA about the actual process of making Guinness?
I do. That's what he said. I'm sure he's sworn to secrecy.
Right.
Yeah.
So even Mike's saying, yeah, I don't know.
Right. He is saying that.
Yeah.
He is saying, I guess anything's possible. But interesting. I guess we'll have to find out.
And again,
I guess we don't. We already know.
One of my favorite beers in the world.
Sure.
I will drink it. I don't care what color it is, but until it gets to my lips, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But they also have this beer that is rumored. They make like a lager, but everything there they make with the same yeast, so it's not like a lager yeast.
And you said that lager is the same beer without the color.
Yeah. That's what. Not that the person I'm talking about that I met in China didn't say that. Another person who worked for that person in China told me that.
Got it.
I don't know how far down the rabbit hole or how many connections of telephone that is. So that one I won't stand behind as strongly, but they do talk about on the tour how our yeast is magical. It can make ale or stout or lager, and it's like, well, you can. If you just put that on any label, my yeast can do that too.
It can make ale or stout? Wow.
Or lager. So, just depends on the label. Anyway, I did have the Guinness at the top of the tour.
Yes.
Which was a very good Guinness.
You'd hope so.
Yeah.
You'd hope it'd be fresh and well served.
The question I've gotten most from people, mostly non-beer people, most of my friends aren't beer people, is the Guinness better over there?
And?
It tastes exactly the same everywhere.
Yes.
Like, it's the same thing.
So at least we agree on that.
It's the same flavor-added product everywhere in the world.
Sure. Well, very interesting. So, I guess until we know otherwise, I guess that's the canon that it's essentially it's Coors Light, and then they add molasses to it, and then it's Guinness.
That's exactly what I said.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Well, you heard it there, and you heard him confirm it too. So now it really is canon.
If you're at home, get a Coors Light, mix some molasses into it, and you tell me. You tell me.
It's true.
You know?
It's true.
And then get some nitrogen.
And then get nitrogen.
Yeah, just
Liquid
find some
nitrogen.
nitrogen.
Be very careful.
Yeah.
You don't want to end up like the
I
T1000.
mean, just wave it into the glass. It's the most
Shattered.
abundant, the most abundant substance in the world, in
Right.
the universe. So
I do think it's interesting that someone you have a learned palate, and I think it's interesting that it tasted exactly the same to you there, because we've all met multiple people who say the best beer they've ever had in their life was on the Guinness tour. Is it in Dublin?
Yes, in
In
Dublin.
Dublin, right?
It probably was.
You've met, but I think
Vibes,
that
baby.
speaks to exactly
Yeah.
the vibes. I mean, and that's like the you know, that sort of magical essence of beer and how it's not just a thing in a glass, but it's an experience.
yeah,
Talk about, yeah.
one of my
Oh,
favorite
yeah.
parts.
There's a segue.
Just before,
Yeah.
sorry, I'll shut up. We can segue.
Yeah. So speaking of vibes and how vibes made can make something.
I want to hear what Mike was going to say. But
All right,
Well,
let's hear it.
on the Guinness tour, there's like a tasting experience where you can like learn how to taste like a professional. Is how it's built. It's free. You get like one little, like maybe 2-ounce pour of Guinness. I got an extra one because they asked. They're like, anyone who can answer this question gets one extra pour of Guinness. And it was, what color is Guinness? And I was like, red.
Oh,
And they got
Pale.
So-
Before you add the molasses or after?
then they absconded me out and
Then-
rendition style out of the back of
Yeah.
it. But you get your little glass, you go to the next room, they teach you how to taste Guinness, and the first thing that you need to know about tasting Guinness is that you cannot sip Guinness. So the first step in being a connoisseur of drinking Guinness is to drink a bunch of Guinness, which was so funny to me. To be like, nope, you got to drink at least a few gulps to actually get the flavor of it. And it's like, you've so effectively told people you have to drink a lot of this, and it works. It was amazing.
I mean, I will say this. There are beers that are not... There are sipping beers, and then there are gulping beers,
Sure.
I'd say. And I'd say most of the English-style beer is not meant to be
That's Irish. But no.
English-style beers. Like the porters and
Sure.
the stouts and
Yeah.
the bitters and stuff like that.
Certainly, I agree that Guinness is not meant to be sipped. But
Yeah. Same with Coors Light.
Between the best way to drink Guinness is to guzzle it, and like the splitting the G is like to drink 30.
They did not mention
They
the
didn't mention
splitting.
that.
Okay.
But like this thing, it's like drink like 30 to 50% more than you would ever drink in a single like approach to a glass.
Yeah.
It's been incredible. They're
Oh, yeah.
geniuses.
I don't think they did that, but I think they're cool with it being there.
Yeah, people are drinking more than they're supposed to on the first approach. Yeah, they're happy with it.
8.5% West Coast IPA. Sip or gulp?
8.5%
Yeah.
8.5.
sip, 7.1% gulp.
Where's that line?
It's 7.3.
All right. I think there's something in between the two. I think something like a Guinness.
For San Diego
Is
style.
it a gargle?
A Guinness or a Harvey's, you're going like 1, 2.
Yeah.
Maybe 1, 2, 3. That's me talking into the glass as I do it. Where I think a West Coast IPA is you take a nice big sip. But
Sure.
a gulp is, I think,
Yeah.
you get a couple waves
Yeah.
of it.
I did crush that Harvey. Like I had several Harveys really fast. To the point
Yeah.
where my wife was like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "It's like it's 3.8%.
You can't.
It's
It
more
takes-
hydrating than water."
Yeah, it takes hours. It takes hours to get drunk. Look at these guys. They've been here all day drinking it. Look
Yeah.
at them. They're fine.
And look at
then
that stack
they're-
of glasses. They're not returning to the bar.
And they were like getting in a brawl at that time.
Yeah,
and-
yeah. They were
They're just
fighting
fine.
about if Suburbs or Sprawl Part 2 are the best Arcade Fire songs.
I like
Okay.
that one. They did get bad though.
I haven't listened to a single Arcade Fire song for a while. I just kind of hate their whole vibe, but a couple of those songs, I'm like, damn, these are really good songs.
I think I was confusing that with Arctic Monkeys. I don't know. They're-
Yeah.
So-
Arctic Monkeys is more apt to sell out Royal Albert Hall. They're actually British.
right. That's what I was thinking of until right now. Actually, I was thinking Arctic Monkeys.
That would have been way cooler. Anyway,
Yeah. So
Josh wrote a book.
there's a book about a drink that has vibes, but that we won't go back to that. It's not going to work. It's your second book, right?
Correct. Yep.
and the book is called Malort, The Redemption of a Revered and Reviled Spirit.
Which drink is it about?
I don't know. That's what we're here to find
It's
out.
about Guinness.
Yeah, there we go.
The answer
classic
to how they
Chicago
make
beverage.
the Guinness is right here.
Is here.
Oh, look at that. That's a version of the book I haven't seen with the little blurb on the front. I've never seen that in the wild.
Did you write that
There
yourself,
you go.
Chris?
I did. I printed this one up front.
Wall Street
I
Journal.
bought
wrote
this in the wild. Yeah. Everything else looks kind of the same.
that. Yeah.
We're having a book review show.
With
Yeah.
the author.
A book club with the author. Thank you for reminding us that you wrote. He always wants us to know he wrote it.
Well, I just want to
He
remind
wrote
you
the
so
book.
you don't review it too harshly while I'm sitting here.
Well, that
Buckle up, buddy.
buckle
If
up.
you think
All
Chris
right,
and
all right,
I
I
have
can
done
handle
book
it.
reports in the past when we were in school and we actually read the book.
Yeah.
We loved this book.
All in all, this was a great book. All in all was my forte. Finishing the final. All in all, I'd say Malort, The Redemption of a Revered and Reviled Spirit was a very good book that I would gladly recommend to other people interested in Malort or redemption stories of reviled or revered spirits. The end.
Great.
Here-
Wasn't
now
there a
here-
Bart Simpson moment? Can we drop that audio in right here?
Yeah.
So let me ask a couple legit questions. I'll start out with a comment. Very interesting story, and I'm guessing that you learned a lot about this story as you were researching it and writing it. Is that true?
That is 100% true.
So what made you want to start? What gave you the idea of like this is? I think this is book worthy.
So I like Malort. As probably everyone listening knows, most people hate it and love to hate it, and it's punchline and
Yeah.
write a passage and it's terrible. Here you got to try all that stuff. A lot of us authentically like it. How do you guys feel about it?
I like Malort.
It's fine.
I'm never going to sip Malort, but I like Malort.
Yeah, no, that's a shot. So I keep a bottle at home, and I had I busted it out one night after the kids were in bed, poured myself a shot, took the shot, and just had sort of this light bulb moment of, I wonder if there's a book here. Because I'd written the first book, Barrel Aged Stout and Selling Out, Goose Island, Anheuser-Busch, and How Craft Beer Became Big Business.
Never heard of it or the beer.
Either brewery.
No.
Goose,
Well,
Anheuser, no, it doesn't
never
ring a
heard
bell. And so I was thinking, next book, what's the next book going to be? And so as I was standing in my kitchen taking that shot, I thought, I wonder if there's a book here. Because I thought, well, I mean, the fact that people are fascinated by Malort is self-evident, right?
Yeah.
But then in this moment, I thought, well, we don't know that much about Malort, and what we do know only sort of raises more questions. And what did we know? We knew that it's called Jeppson's Malort. That some Swedish immigrant Carl Jeppson introduced it to Chicago at some point. This businessman owned it for many, many, many years. When he died, he left Malort to his secretary, and then she ran it, and then somehow Malort became really popular again. And there were just a lot of dots to connect there, such as how did it get really popular? Mm-hmm. Who was this guy that owned it all these years, and why did he leave it to his secretary? And so I just started poking at it. And it did take a couple of months to be sure that I had a book there. But yeah, as I got to talk to more people, I called the woman who was the secretary to this guy who owned it all those years and then later owned it herself. That was my first call. And as I got to know her and sort of connect the dots and realized there were multiple characters and interesting characters and interesting relationships between those characters, it just sort of slowly came into view after 3 months that, I think I got a book here.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I learned a lot about the Chicago bar industry through this book, and about people that I just did not know about. So it was very interesting, especially for someone who's been in the industry. I feel like I'm kind of on the outskirts of the actual beer. I think I know the beer industry very well, but the whole like Chicago hospitality industry, I do not feel like I'm an insider of those. Like you were talking about Heisler, and I was like, oh, that's why it's called Heisler? Or I'm guessing like everybody would like you're laughing because I'm guessing you know the last names of the guys or like see, I don't know that. So it was interesting and a few times, I read the book a while back and then I was kind of leafing through it again and kind of getting caught up with it when I knew you were gonna come on, and I have a question for you as well. So you knew that you were all right. That's when you decided it was worth looking into writing the book. And Malort has had this huge resurgence. And who do you think? Do you think there is a singular person that is most responsible for this resurgence? Because there's characters in the book, right? And they kind of play different roles a little bit.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's a single character.
Yeah.
I think it's just it's the passage of time.
Yeah.
Malort just sort of hung around, and Malort really truly should have disappeared many times over the years, and there were many moments where it could have just gone away, and no one would have noticed or known or cared. Mm-hmm. But it just hung around and hung around. It's this really fluke freak story that it survived as long, and then not only survived,
Like old
thrived.
Mexican guys were kind of like
Yeah.
the only ones drinking
Yeah.
it for a while.
And Polish guys and Mexican guys,
Yeah.
and this guy who owned it for 65 years, George Brody. It was just sort of his lifelong hobby and passion. It made no sense that he would want to keep Malort all this time and run it, and he lost money on it most years. But he was a lawyer. Was how early on he owned a liquor company, but he sold the liquor company and kept one brand, Malort, of course. Sometimes I'll when I do an event, I'll say, and he kept one brand, and what was that brand? And everyone says Malort, and I say, no, it was Maker's Mark.
Yeah.
Yes. Happy Van Winkle.
Yeah. that book already exists too.
Yeah.
So he kept Malort because he didn't like it. He just thought it was this weird, bitter, hard to drink thing, and it just was a challenge to sell and market. And I mean, it's strange that it even became his life's hobby and work, but it was. And then when he died, he left it to his secretary, who was not just his secretary at that point. Mm-hmm. She was very open with me about that, and it's real. There's like a love story in the middle of this book, a very unconventional one, and she kept it going to honor George, the guy who owned it for 65 years. So if George hadn't kept it going 65 years, we wouldn't be talking about it. If Pat hadn't kept it going, that was the woman who was his secretary and his companion for many years. If she hadn't kept it going, it wouldn't be around. And then these younger guys, as the generation that we sort of came up in drinking in Chicago, the craft beer generation, the craft spirits generation, that's local, that tastes different, I'm interested in that generation. A couple of those guys, a guy named Peter Strom and a guy named Sam Meckling, if they hadn't got involved, it might not have become what it became. So that there isn't a single character. It's just sort of fluke after fluke. And I tried to distill the book into a sentence just to sort of guide me.
Yeah. What is distill that into a sentence?
Yeah.
It could be a long sentence.
It's I don't even think it's a run-on. Malort didn't change to please the masses. The masses changed to understand Malort.
Okay. Interesting.
Now, just as an aside, as a Malort connoisseur or drinker yourself, and you've had it over many years, I'm imagining. Right?
Oh, you know what I should have done? There's no point in mentioning this now. I have various vintages at home from different years. I should have brought some bottles.
This is the main question, right? Has Malort changed in its flavor profile significantly, or is it things that we've just grown accustomed to it?
Great question. Absolutely, it has changed.
100%.
Yeah.
But it's always been changing. Because I remember having it probably 15 years ago.
Right.
And Sam Meckling was a bartender at a. We'll get into this in a little bit. At a bartender I used to frequent, and he was just the bartender who was way into Malort. So he came running up and be like, "Oh, a new batch of Wormwood came in. It's different now." And he gave me little tastings, and I was like, "Oh, it's definitely different." And then from then on, I was open to the idea when people said, "Oh, this batch is more like this," because me being a curmudgeon at heart, I would be like, "You're full of it." Because then they're like, at packaging, it's actually flavorless, and they put in wormwood molasses
I didn't say
at
flavorless.
the end.
That's not what I said.
Colorless.
Don't put words in my mouth.
It's clear.
I didn't say colorless either.
Clear, you said.
It's basically they have big vats of Miller Clear. And
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. But anyway, so they, I was kind of open to the idea. So now I've just been accepting of it, like, oh, this is definitely more bitter, more sweet.
So back in the day, there was a lot of variation batch to batch.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it could be more bitter. It could be more sweet. It could be more vegetal, which that's the worst Malort. Like that's truly the bad, yucky, gross Malort. And now in the hands of CH Distillery, to jump ahead
Sweeter,
to
I
modern
think.
days, exactly. It's consistent. I think there's much less variation, but it is sweeter, especially up front. So it still is pretty bitter in the finish, right? I mean, it still tastes like Malort at the end of the shot, but up front, it's definitely a thicker body and sweeter.
Yeah.
And more consistent. So,
Right.
yeah, to sort of jump to the end of the story. I mean, I do think something has been lost a little bit. It's lost sort of its messy punk edge,
Totally.
but it's still Malort.
When did CH take it over?
2018.
2018.
Yeah, so that's kind of, I wanted to talk about my favorite character in the book, and I don't want to spoil it for people who haven't read, but
Is it Luke Skywalker?
it's Luke Skywalker.
Because that's a different book.
Oh.
And that's also a movie. That's more of a movie.
Well, I only
Did they make a movie of
only
it?
read books that were movies first.
You read the
So
novelization.
wait, what book are we talking about? Yeah, I only read novelizations of movies.
Star Wars: A Brew Hope.
Exactly. Sam is my favorite
Sam's here, yeah.
character.
You knew Sam,
in the book,
right?
Yeah. He worked at Patty Long's, and there's an amazing story in the book. And he was. Is it fair to say?
Is this the Billboard story?
Oh my God! That's not in the book though, is it?
Yeah, it is.
That exactly. The two ones.
Yeah, it's in there. And actually, you know where I heard that story the first time?
Where?
Chris
Who?
Quinn. You told it to me.
Oh, that's amazing.
You told it to me. Yep.
That's awesome.
Years
Can I hear
ago,
that?
when actually, so this must have been in 2021 because I think I was working on the book at that point. You told me that, and then I started chasing it down, and you told it exactly right. And it was a seminal guerrilla marketing moment, and there were a lot of guerrilla marketing moments along the way.
So
as
let's go
Malort
back a little
became
bit for people who
thing,
might not
and
know
that
what we're
was
talking
that was a
about.
huge one.
Yeah.
Is
So
this the You're Having Twins?
Yes.
yes.
Yep.
So this guy Sam was like way into it, and he would put together. To
Are
me,
we jumping around too much? Do we need to fill some gaps in
that's
here?
what I was saying. Why don't we go back? And,
Okay,
so my
okay.
favorite character was Sam.
Yeah.
And Sam was a bartender because Malort was becoming a favorite of the hospitality industry, kind of like PBR kind of came to prominence from industry people really liking it.
Yeah. Can we rewind a little bit more?
Yeah.
So George Brody owned it for 65 years. He bought it in 1935. I think it was 35 from Carl Jepsen, the man, and he operated it up until 99 when he died. I think that's 65 years, 64
And originally,
years.
it was made in Chicago, right?
It was initially made in Chicago. Yep, exactly. George had a little. It never sold much, ever. It did find a little bit of success in the late 60s, early 70s, as George marketed it to like blue collar factory bros. Like, only a real macho man would drink this stuff. No woman would ever touch it. Like those were literally his advertisements.
It was the Stone Brewing of
Yeah,
cordials.
Yep, exactly. Yep, ahead of its. I mean, really, it was way ahead of its time marketing. And then sales just dropped. I mean, think about if you can remember, gentleman or listener. I mean, through the '80s, it was all about light beer and it was about vodka and wine coolers. I mean, it's just like something like Malort just had no place in this world whatsoever through the '80s and the '90s. George dies in 1999. Sales are dropping every year. His companion/secretary, Pat Gablick, takes over the brand really as a tribute to him. He loved Malort. She loved George, and her way to, sort of celebrate him and honor him was to continue operating Malort. And for the first 8-9 years, Malort continues not to sell much of anything, but then we get to what you were just talking about, Chris. The really the industry folks, sort of the artists, like the Columbia College students, like just the people who are sort of on the front edge of finding out the cool shit, discover Malort. And cultural taste had really changed from that light beer, vodka, wine cooler days to craft beer, to farmers markets, to
but also like snarkiness was at an all-time high then. Too.
Snarky was cool. Local became really important.
Yeah.
And authenticity, it's like hard to, you know it when you see it. And Malort was authentic, right?
There's like this combination of authenticity and irony happening at the same time,
Totally,
right? Where
totally.
it's
That's
like,
kind of what I meant
it's this
by,
like
yeah.
snarky, being like it's this thing that's authentic to this place, but it's also like to like this is kind of ironic, right?
And there was this really interesting wrinkle that sort of occurred to me during the reporting of the book. Social media became a thing, and you could taste Malort, and Malort face became a thing, and you could take a picture of someone and share it, and then it would go to the little computer in someone's pocket. And, I mean, it's like you could talk about Malort too in this really fresh way. I think without social media, I'm not sure its resurgence ever would have happened. So all these things sort of conspired. And Malort began to find a new audience really in about 07, 08 is when it started.
Yeah.
And then the sales really just started to pick up.
And it started from a fan essentially starting what would now be considered a fan account.
Yep.
And that was Sam, who was a bartender at Patty Long's, which was my regular bar, because I lived right around there. And Sam was one of the bartenders there. Pat Berger, longtime guest of the show, was the owner. And Sam lived upstairs and bartended there and loved Malort.
He loved Malort.
And this is an era where, like you were saying with social media, where an individual could just be like, I wonder if Malort has a Twitter.
Yeah.
And be like, no, these people have no idea. And just like make the Twitter account. And it's like,
and that's what Sam
there
did.
were no blue check marks. Right. There were no blue check marks. There was none. It's like, well, now this is the Malort Twitter account. Like,
yeah.
And Malort was being run by this woman, Pat. She was about 72 or so at the time, and Malort was literally a one-person company. It was her. And she was operating it out of the spare bedroom of her apartment. So, she didn't know what Twitter was. Right. She didn't really know how to use the internet.
And Sam was running it as Malort.
Right.
The Twitter account. And that really put wind in Malort's sales.
Yes. Yeah. Right. I mean, that's when it became... I mean, the ads he would put together were so amazing.
Incredible.
They were incredible.
Yeah.
So the one, I guess I'll talk about my favorite one of all time. I think it might be my favorite ad of all time.
Yeah,
And it was, there was this intersection, kind of one of those like three-way, yeah. And so it was two billboards that kind of were at 90 degrees from one another, so they kind of faced each other, and you could see them both right next to each other. And they were a black background, and it was two champagne flutes, and I think maybe a bottle of champagne, or just two champagne flutes, and it said, "You're having twins." And then the other one was the same black background, except it was a bottle of Malort, and maybe 2 shots of Malort there, and it said, "They're joined at the head." And it was amazing, and I looked
so you've
at
gotten
it.
go ahead.
So I was so I went there.
And he posted that on Twitter.
He posted it on Twitter, and I said, I know that intersection.
Yeah.
I went there and looked, and it wasn't until then I realized it wasn't real.
That
I
was all.
like,
It was all Photoshop.
yeah.
And
I didn't realize
and
it was
again,
Photoshop.
For
Yeah.
context, for 2 years about 2 years, he'd been just posting these really amazing tweets about Malort, which actually he.
Tonight, you fight your dad.
Yeah, that's like the stuff
I mean-
that is still used to advertise that
Yeah, yeah.
brand came out of that Twitter account. And so that, and then as he had to get more and more audacious, so he started doing stuff like that in Photoshop, and he got in actually a lot of trouble for that. But
mean,
that was what
hey,
the brand.
Great artists push
Yes,
the limit.
From
Absolutely.
who got him in trouble?
Well, Pat was pissed at him because she felt like she could get sued. I mean, he broke all sorts of
I'm sure. Yeah.
copyright laws and stuff by doing that. She sent him a very strongly worded email, which I did see in my
But then they
the
became
reporting of the book.
So she went. So Sam then told me one of the most incredible stories I've ever heard, and I've told many, many people. And this book again recounted it exactly as Sam had told me, which was he showed up one time into Patty Long's, and Pat was there with an attorney, and basically was threatening him and saying that you're misrepresenting and you're
And then he's
Oh yeah, that's
he's like
I
maybe
don't
that's
think
what
we've-
Malort needs.
I don't
a little
think we've made that clear
misrepresentation.
that Sam had nothing to do with the brand officially. He
Nothing.
wasn't working for the brand. He was
No,
just doing
he was
this
the
out of
bartender at
love
Patty
for the
Long's, yeah.
brand.
Yeah, and for the yucks, like right, like he was
Yeah.
doing bits on the internet.
And he had, they had T-shirts that they were selling at Patty Long's. You'd see him hanging
He was
up.
doing it
Yeah.
because he knew that whoever this woman that owned Malort, she would never sell Malort T-shirts, and
Right.
he felt the world needed Malort T-shirts, so he just
And they
started
did.
selling Malort T-shirts.
Yeah.
and they sold out in
Right.
minutes. Yeah,
So she was saying, you're making money off of the Jepson's Malort brand and this and that. And then, as he told me, he said, hold on, I'll be right back. And he ran upstairs and came back with a bunch of, returned envelopes.
one
One.
envelope.
Oh, just one.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And
Sorry.
it's okay.
Yeah.
And yes, it's a true story. I have the envelope. I have the check that was in it.
Right, so it was the check that he had tried to give her for the profits.
He had tried. So he was selling these T-shirts for I can't remember, $18 a piece or something
Yeah.
like that. And so he had made about maybe $1,000 or something on these T-shirts, and he sent her a check for $200 without saying how he made it. He didn't, because he didn't want to implicate. If she didn't know about the T-shirts, he didn't want to alert her. If she did know about the T-shirts, he didn't want to implicate himself. So he just sent her a check and said, "Thank you for allowing me to let Malort be." Actually, I think I quoted exactly in the book. Basically, thank you for letting allowing Malort to be such an important part of my life. It was actually Sam's a very smart, creative guy. It was a really sort of lovely, eloquent letter. And he sent the check, but he had sent it to the wrong address, and the check and letter were returned to him. So Pat comes in with her lawyer and this other guy that I mentioned before, Peter Strom, who was working for her sort of on the side for free in those early days. And the lawyer says, when were you going to pay us if you're making money off these T-shirts? And he said, I tried. And he ran upstairs and he grabbed the letter and the check, passed it across the table.
Saved his ass, I'm sure.
Saved his ass. And they walked into Patty Long's that day to shut him down. And instead, they hired him.
They offered him a job right then and there.
They offered him a job. It's a true
Yeah,
story.
yeah. The way he said it was like out of a movie where she tells him, "All right, you can close the briefcase," and she offered him a job right then. So that's amazing. And I have one question, and then maybe I want to get another beer.
Yes.
But the whole time I'm reading it, especially since I knew Sam, and I loved that kind of style of marketing. And Sam really wanted to buy the brand, but just couldn't make it happen for many reasons. And Pat really wanted to sell it in certain ways.
To skip ahead, so it starts taking off in about 08, 09, and then the sales 10, 11, 12, they're just doubling year over year. Just this kind of growth that any brand would love to have, and it's this trajectory. You can't invent this hardly. It's just sort of this luck and timing and all this. And so by 2018, she is probably 78 or so at this point, maybe a little younger, maybe 75. And Malört was literally nearly worthless when she acquired it in 1999. And by 2018, she realizes she has something of some value now because sales are growing every year. And so she says, I'm ready to sell. And yes, Sam did want to.
And she wanted to sell it to Sam.
She wanted to sell to Sam. She would have
because
loved
they
to.
really became friends.
They were really, they were tight. They really loved each other. Yeah.
So the counterfactual, or the that I want to put out there is, to you, what if? Because I was thinking the whole time, what if Sam had bought Malort? Where do you think? Have you ever thought, like, where would Malort be today if Sam had been able to buy it, or was it just never really was going to happen?
It was never really going to happen.
Okay, yeah.
And then CH, he wound up helping connect Pat to CH, and CH bought it because Sam didn't have the money or the backing, and CH had plenty of money. And CH buying it felt like a good outcome to Sam also, because it was a Chicago distillery. It's owned by a good guy. His name's Tremaine Atkinson. Mm-hmm. You probably met him at some point. And he was going to take care of the brand, and most important, Malört was going to just survive and be in good professional hands. Production was going to come back to Chicago. But, it's people feel so intensely about Malört that when, again, this guy I mentioned, Peter, who was about Sam's age and preceded Sam, and he and Sam had some conflict over how they saw the brand should grow or what should happen to it as it was starting to pick up steam. Peter left the equation, and he was, this is going to sound silly, but he was heartbroken. It was like, as he was telling me about how he felt about leaving Malört, I said, this sounds like you're having like a breakup with another person. And he said that's what it felt like. It was a real sense of loss. And then skip ahead a few years, basically the same thing happens to Sam, and he spoke about it much the same way. It's not, and that's the power of Malört, vibes. That's the vibes of Malört. It's not just a shot, It's not just another vodka. It's this singular thing that people feel deeply. And I think, we're sitting here in 2025. I don't think it's the same anymore, But 10 years ago, it was just this. It was ours, and people just felt it really innately.
Yeah, if anything, Malört seems to be all too aware of its cultural cachet right now.
Well, I mean, that might be part of the story being that like Malört grew and existed because of the internet, and now it doesn't feel the same because of it, right? Like,
well, it's also more expensive than like Evan Williams Bonded, which doesn't make sense.
How much is a bottle of Malört? I haven't bought a bottle of Malört in a minute.
It's going up. We can go look. We'll look at the break.
But like the idea that like the ability to connect to people that, and share your experience of drinking Malört is kind of what re-sparked interest, or like, the millennial or elder Gen X drinker of Malört. But also like that ability to flatten the experience of Malört kind of changed it in a way that's, like you said, it's not the same, right? It's not.
But it's so here. I mean, it's not going anywhere. It's still like the shot of Chicago 100%. By far.
And honestly, like it being consistent and a little bit more sweet, but still with a little edge to it, makes it more likely that it will stay that way, right? Like I was telling you a story, Josh, before we started recording, of my best friend from growing up had his bachelor party here in probably 2015, 2016 maybe. Before it was super consistent, and all these guys from Connecticut came here, and we went out to bars, and I was like, you guys haven't had Malört? And so now it's a thing where like whenever like as I described to you, like some sort of Malört zeitgeisty thing breaks escape velocity of Chicago, I get like 15 texts within like a day or two of like, check this out, and I'm like, yeah, we're still drinking it. And I brought a bottle to his wedding, and people were taking shots of it and either hating it or loving it, and it's something that people now, know me in that group of people for being the guy who brought Malort to the wedding, or the guy who introduced him to Malort more than it is like anything else.
Yeah, that's it. That's the power. It's an experience, an experience in a bottle. And there's a lot of, I met a lot of people along the way who have stories like that, where there's like very specific memories entwined with I was going to say the brand, but it's not just the brand. Obviously, it's the experience,
right.
And people, it's fascinating. I mean, people use it. I've heard a zillion stories of Malort going to weddings and bachelor parties.
Right.
But an interesting one is a friend of a friend sadly committed suicide, and they honor him every year. His friends get together, and they do it with a bottle of Malort. And it's like it makes the moment, it consecrates, for moments happy, moments sad. It's fascinating. It's just got this crazy power to it.
It is interesting. And if you want to, I travel, I'll try to bring beer and stuff with me and drop it off, but nothing hits like when you bring somebody in the bar or beer or whatever industry from outside Illinois a bottle of Malort.
Yeah.
That is like you would have thought that I gave. I remember one time I was at, I think, Meeting House, and I had brought some beer, and then I also was like, oh, here, I have a bottle of Malort. They're like, what, really? Like, whoa, we can have Malort? And I think he gave me like a free case of beer or something like that. I was like, yeah, it's cool, man. Not a big deal.
It's also something like, I don't know if this is everyone's experience, but my first experience having it, and then the way that I carried it forward, is you do the shot with someone, right? Like, it's not like, it's not this novelty that you're trying to trick someone into doing it.
Well, there is plenty of that.
Sure. But that's not the true, to me, that's not the authentic experience of introducing someone to Malort. Like, I think of it as like trauma bonding, of like, welcome to our thing, and then do this with us and experience it. And now you're like a hazing of sorts. Like, now you're one of us. We're not gonna leave you on the edge or push you into this weird thing that we wouldn't do with you. And it seems like to be a very like Midwestern or Chicago experience of like, we're gonna bond and we're gonna do this together in a way that, like, I don't know, maybe it was different growing up on the East Coast, where like that would be like, oh, look at this idiot drinking the bitter thing.
Oh no, but there is a lot of that. I've met a few people who were tricked into their first shot. It's like often industry people in the early days, and they would, we're gonna get a round of Jameson shots or whatever it is, and everyone gets the Jameson.
I've had that happen
except
to me too.
The new guy.
Yeah.
And the new guy doesn't even know what Malort is. Takes that shot. And one guy I talked to, he actually owns a bar in New Orleans, and he sells a shit ton of Malort now. But
What bar?
Pep's Pub.
Oh, okay.
I think it was like Pep's guy. He took that first shot of Malort expecting a shot of Jameson or whatever, and he was actually angry. He said, "What is this? You're just trying to embarrass me, punk me." And they were like, "No." After he said he was really, really angry, and after he calmed down, they explained what was happening. Yeah. And he was still pissed for a while, and then he suddenly sort of got it, and now I think he sells more Malort than anyone in New Orleans.
I've had a opposite experience in my life where like I didn't drink whiskey for a while because the first time I ever got sick was drinking whiskey, and someone was like tricked me into drinking whiskey by saying we're taking shots of Malort. So it's a very specifically Chicago experience of like a 19-year-old, I think. But
let's fill up our beers and then come back with more of the Beer Temple podcast.
We're back.
We're back. Hey, is it the first time we've ever talked over each other on the We're Back?
Probably on the We're Back, yeah.
We're back.
We are so back.
We're back, baby.
We've never been backer.
Never been backer.
We're talking with Josh Noel, author,
Professionals.
rock on tour, writer of The Redemption of a Revered and Reviled Spirit. Malort, of course, is what we're talking about.
Can I give you a little nugget?
Yeah.
I thought of that title while I was swimming laps.
Oh.
Yep.
Look at you.
That's where the good thinking happens.
While you're exercising? Is that why I don't have any good
Generally.
thoughts? Like good ideas? Because I never
Take
exercise.
a walk, Chris.
I mean,
Just take a walk around the block.
I exercise, and I have less good ideas than I've ever had in my life. Actually, that's not true. I've had very bad ideas that I'm now living out.
Oh, there you go. There you go.
Owning a brewery seemed fun at the time, though.
Yeah, yeah. Which time?
Moving on.
Which time?
Moving on now. So yeah, we were talking with Josh, or asking him about his book, his latest book, and you can get it everywhere. Is there an audiobook version, and do you read it?
There is, and I don't know.
Who does?
Sam?
No, that would be lovely. No, we had to settle for Morgan Freeman, sadly.
Oh,
no, I'm just kidding. That would have been awesome. No, some guy. I don't know.
Some dude.
Yeah.
Why not you?
They did let me.
Sounds like not fun to do. I don't think I would want to.
We need an AI Morgan Freeman saying, "Tonight's the night you fight your dad."
Tonight's the night.
Tonight's
fight
yeah.
your dad.
That was not too bad of a Morgan
That
Freeman
wasn't too bad. Good
impersonation.
job, Chris.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Maybe I could do it.
You ever fight your dad?
No. Never fought my dad.
It's kind of surprising.
Yeah. We've gotten. We have never fist fought my dad.
Gotcha.
So, what were you going to say, Mike?
I didn't have anything
Okay.
to say. I was going to ask you to fight your dad.
Well, I'm just going to say something that I wanted to say. Because this show is generally about beer. And I
Heard of it.
do feel firmly that a lot of what allowed Malort to thrive, as it began to thrive in about 2008, as we discussed. What else was happening in 2008? What else was beginning to thrive?
IPAs.
You got it.
Bitter experience.
Exactly. So I think there's a lot of overlap between the rise of Malort and the rise of craft beer. And the rise of craft beer, of course, is fueled by the rise of IPA. And so I get asked when I've done a lot of readings and events and stuff, and I'm often asked what my first taste of Malort was like. And the story is a little anticlimactic because I tasted it. I think it was in 08 the first time I tried it. And I thought, oh, that's different. It has an interesting point of view, but I wasn't really shocked or put off or in love or anything. I just the real turning point tasting something for me happened a few years before that. It was probably in 05, I think. Was at the Great Bar Sheffield's, and I was just learning about craft beer at that time. And I was learning about IPA, and I said to the bartender, I think I like IPA. What do you have? Like, I want to try some IPA I've never had, which I'm sure that bartender had that same conversation hundreds or thousands of times subsequently. But in 2005, it was me having that conversation, and he said, wow, I've got this one. It's really hoppy. It's called Racer 5 from this brewery called Bear Republic in California. It's pretty hoppy, and I was like, oh, I'll try it. Pour it. So I got it. That, and the first sip, I thought, oh, my God, I didn't know something could taste like this.
Yeah.
And I wasn't put off, but I was shocked. I was into it, but I was also trying to wrap my brain around it. So
Totally.
that was kind of the first real bitter thing I think I drank.
Yeah.
And so by the time I tasted Malort, I'd been drinking IPA for a few years, so it sort of made some sense to me. But I think there's, again, I'm not, Malort, the rise of Malort, it was a confluence of so many other things happening, things that are obvious and less obvious. But I think one of them is absolutely the rise of craft beer, because we were really just geeking out about flavors like that.
Is bitterness unique in like this? I'm not sure I like this, but I'm intrigued by it on the flavor spectrum. Because like sweetness, you're like, sweetness is good. Acidity, like
It's
I
a
don't
little
think it
more
has quite
off-putting,
the same.
maybe. Yeah.
Like you're not like gonna drink like, oh, that's sour. I'm like, what's going on in there? But like I know a lot of people, myself included, that had like the bitter beer experience and we're like, I don't think I like that, or I'm not sure what that is, but I need to find out more about it. Like, is bitterness like unique in that? And is that part of what Malort is, where you have this and you're like, whoa, that's bitter, and then you're like, wait, what's going on there?
I think bitter is a flavor that is jarring to us, but we can make sense of. So I think you're onto something there. And I think there are flavors, like if something's kind of vegetal or rancid, then that's not appealing, right?
Right.
It's shocking and disgusting. But bitter is something that can be shocking, but also intriguing.
Well, let me say this. I think that bitter, like rancid, are flavors that we've been like attuned to, like just through evolution, maybe even to show us like not to be eaten. Like
Totally,
this isn't ready. Like unripe fruit is like so tannic and bitter that you really can't eat it. You know,
Right.
like a crab apple or something like that. And rancid is like don't eat it. But at certain thresholds, for some reason, it is good. Like including rancid. I mean, people around the world eat things that are a little
Funky and
rancid. Yeah.
Well, bitterness has the element of being medicinal. Like actually, a lot of things that like even now we use as like pharmaceuticals in their natural state are bitter, whereas like rancid is or a vegetal isn't necessarily the case. So bitterness is like historically been poison or medicine for us, and so like that sweet spot, that thing of like, oh no I shouldn't have this, or like, oh maybe I should, is maybe biologically like in us.
Maybe.
Of like,
I mean, they've been bittering
bitterness.
beer for a long time.
right, but that was so we could take a long journey to India and
No, I'm talking about not hopping, but bittering, because they were bittering beer long before they were hopping beer.
right,
You know,
but that's when beer was more of a tonic than it was like a thing that we would go to the pub to have and lubricate ourselves socially.
perhaps. I think they were drinking a lot of beer. I think they were making it more drinkable.
Yeah,
I think they're spicing it essentially, and bitter and sweetness have a wonderful relationship with one another, which is why I think bitter. That's the thing. Like, how do you make it taste less bitter up front? Well, add sweetness to it, because they kind of counteract one another. You know, if something's like bitterness prevents you from tasting the sweetness, and sweetness kind of prevents you from tasting the bitterness. Bitterness will win out in the end. So you get sweet, and then it becomes bitter. But the thing to think about with that shot of Malort, you know, that long bitterness, that sweetness is also still there, just completely covered up by the bitterness. So
Sure.
It's kind of, you know, you can get some added complexity to that sip.
one thing I've been noticing recently is very, very good versions of Malort, barrel aged or barrel fermented beers. I had one from Fair Isle that I don't know the name, that was
Jep.
that was incredible.
I didn't get it. It
and-
sold out. It was the first beer to sell out. We did a big a week ago Friday, so a week and a half ago now. We had Fair Isle come in from Seattle, and they did their launch, and they have some Chicago roots there. So there's a few different things. They had like a few like Chicago-related events out there, but one of the beers they did was in Malort barrels. And they called it Jep, and it was from a couple of years ago, and I think they brought their last couple cases here, and I think they sold here, and we had probably 7, 8, or maybe more. I think over 10 different bottles of Fair Isle beer. Jep, the Malort barrel-aged Saison
It's really good.
is the one that sold first.
Yeah.
But people didn't know that it was necessarily good.
Sure.
I mean, there was a ton. I mean, there were probably a lot of good beers there.
Yeah.
But, yeah,
But
I
also,
didn't get any.
like that balance of the acid and bitter is like why you put vinaigrette on greens, right? So it's
Yeah.
like something where it's like you make this thing where it has this oaky, bitter character with your mixed culture saison.
But don't you find that interesting, like, Josh, that the Malort beer sold first? I mean, that to me was
Power of Malort.
the
People,
power more, but
people
that's
love it.
still irony, right? I mean, nobody's like, oh, Malort and Saison.
I don't
now,
think
that's
it's-
a combination I have to have.
know if it's
I
irony
don't think
anymore.
it's straight irony. I think it's appreciation. I think it's intrigue.
It's attachment too.
It's
People
attachment, yeah.
like you know, maybe it's not something where you drink it and you're like, man, that tastes good, like Coca-Cola tastes good, but you have an emotional attachment to it.
It was definitely like, I got to try that one.
And
'Cause
again,
they
it's-
knew it would be.
yeah,
It's
But
experience.
people that really don't like something are going to be like, oh, I have to have the asparagus beer, you know, like So like they like Malort. I think people like Malort more than we think people like Malort.
Oh, people definitely like it.
Yeah.
They. I mean, even if they don't like drinking it, they appreciate it.
Yeah. It's also cool to have something like that in our city like this. Like I remember going to Pittsburgh, and I don't know why I thought this, but I'm like, what's the local shot here? And they're like, well, we have Super Punch, and I'm like, what the is that? And it's just like an Amaro that they rebrand in there. I'm like, well, let's go. Like
I'm glad someone didn't use that as an excuse to punch you. Like it's some way to.
I didn't know the places
pick on
have
out-of-town.
local
Right.
shots, though. Is that a thing other than
No,
in
I
Chicago?
don't think so. But like,
I mean, I guess in Kentucky, but
right.
What do they have there?
bourbon.
Vodka.
Yeah. Sorry. Duh.
But it's like they said they had one, and then I'm like, oh, let's go to the bar and get one. And we went to a bar, and they're like, we don't have that.
What, Super Punch?
But if you go to a bar here, like every bar that has a license to have spirits,
Oh yeah,
has
they
Malort.
They better have
Yeah.
the Malort.
Yeah. And you go to other bars now or in other towns, and like Fernet is having like a big moment with bartenders and stuff like that, where industry people are drinking like Fernet Branca and like
that's been a thing, isn't it?
I was in San
It has.
Antonio not that long ago and was shocked to walk in and see Malort behind the bar. And I
Yeah.
said, "Who's drinking that in San Antonio?" And he said it was industry people. So it's got its little pockets beyond Chicago now: Milwaukee, Denver, Austin, New Orleans, Seattle, Portland.
I have a friend who is Japanese and Filipino by heritage, is in Japan right now. I'm following his stories on Instagram, and his last story was a picture of a back bar in Osaka, Japan, and he just wrote "how," and it's a picture of Malort.
Nice.
On the back bar in Osaka,
And
Japan.
Malort is not, I believe, is not distributed there.
No, I would be shocked.
So these places, it's not contraband. Like somebody's bringing in Malort to San Antonio.
Oh no, it's distributed there. It's now so it was in Chicago only for years and years and years, and now it's in 30 plus states.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I'm not sure how I feel about that.
Yeah. That's part of the
still ours.
it
Sure.
still belongs to us. Far more is sold here than anywhere else.
Sure.
But I think it's great that it's getting out there and people are appreciating it.
You would say that on air. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, Josh, how do you really feel about?
Yeah, how do you really feel?
35
What, here,
states? We're not recording, right, Serge?
no, we're muting it now.
Just kidding.
Yeah, no. I mean, obviously, it's good for
Do
the
you really
brand.
take umbrage at Malort getting out there in the world? I mean, it's not like
No.
it's
No, but
taking over other markets. It's it's at probably a handful of bars.
We
in
were
Austin,
into it
but-
before it was cool.
it's fun to have something that's yours, I guess.
But I think it's still ours.
yeah.
Yeah, and like you're never gonna go to a place like that, and you're gonna be like, well, we're from Chicago, and they're definitely gonna be like, oh, that's cool. Like let's talk about Malort, right? They're never gonna be like, who gives a shit? At least as far as places that have Malort on their back bar, right?
Right.
I do think that if you sort of list, if you know, what do you associate with Chicago? So that random person, Michael Jordan, Al Capone, pizza,
Deep dish pizza, hot
Chicago
dog.
Cubs, Chicago Bears,
dogs.
architecture,
Sports.
hot dogs. Yep. Blah, 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 blah. You get
Malort's
far,
top.
yeah, top 20. Malort is probably going to be there.
Yeah, and if you're in the drinking class, it's got to be top 10. I feel like my friends would be like, that's a top 10 item from Chicago. Right after the boat.
I think
tour.
my friends would probably not know what Malort was.
Fair. And
Yeah.
you've been a bad friend when they came to Chicago, my bud.
Yeah, I guess I have. I've never done that. Although I think there's a very good chance that Sam poured me my first Malort ever. I'm almost certain he poured my wife's first shot of Malort ever.
You don't remember that first shot exactly, or how it tasted?
No, I don't. I remember shots of it. I remember the first shot of it. I remember. So like maybe when I was like really young and I didn't know the difference in all spirits that I would have in shots would be like disgusting.
Sure.
Which I think I was probably past that age when I came here, but maybe not. But I remember one. I remember the first ones I remember were at Patty Long's with Sam, like geeking out over it and making a big deal that this was their first shots of Malort ever, and he kind of. But it might have been Margaret, or it could have been both of ours. But I know he like announced it to the bar, to the whole place.
I don't remember my first shot of Malort.
Yeah.
It was before I was able to drink legally, I'm sure.
But do you remember your first West Coast IPA?
No. I don't either.
Wow.
I do have a distinct memory of, this is now, Pipeworks did an event at the aviary early on. Because we didn't respond to their emails, so they thought we were big timing them, and then they definitely wanted to do an event with them. And then afterwards, mostly because they were sending them to an email that no one actually had access to for about 6 months. But afterwards, they invited us to like the office, which is like the bar downstairs. And one of the people that worked for us was they're like, you can have whatever you want down here. You can have all the chartreuses with all the truffles in them that you would like, any cocktail you want. It's on us. And one person who worked for us was just drinking Malort on the rocks. And
there's a word for that person. Classy.
Yeah.
On the rocks.
Yeah, Malort on the rocks. That's how he was classing it up.
Snifter.
Yeah, right. And I also always remember Jeff for drinking Malort on the rocks when it's like they're telling us we're not paying for any of this. Get whatever you want. He's like, I'll have 2 fingers of Malort rocks. That's how he was classing it up.
Hand chiseled piece of ice.
It probably was.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you sell much Malort here? At the BT?
A decent amount, yeah.
Has its...
that's what I wanted to look at the break. I wanted to see how much we're charging for it now.
I think it's about 23. I mean, I don't know what you charge.
Here, let's go look.
23-ish
Here,
bottle?
you guys
We'll
do some
banter.
fill, and I'll go look how much it is.
Okay. Hey, Mike.
So in your time drinking Malort, talking about Malort, writing about Malort, I'm sure people have tried to present you with Malort cocktails.
Oh, yes.
Have you had ones?
I love this subject.
Have you had ones that are excellent? I've never had one where I'm glad
I've
Malort
had
was in
a
there.
lot of really good Malort cocktails. I've done a few events where at like good bars where good bartenders who know what they're doing, and you can make a beautiful cocktail with Malort.
Do you have any specific ones that you remember the builds of, or is it just like there's specific?
I will share my best piece of intel, which came from Charles Jolie.
Oh.
He knows a thing
He's
or two.
a new guy around the block.
That's right.
Yeah.
He's trying to find his way in the world of cocktailing.
Good luck to him.
And he's going to do it with Malort. He told me that if you mix Malort with lemon juice and honey syrup, I think I have that right, or maybe you just said simple syrup,
Sure.
it creates this nice bitter grapefruit component in a cocktail.
Yeah.
Because Malort has that grapefruit character, but
Right.
no grapefruit in this little mixture, but lemon juice and then simple syrup or honey syrup and Malort. And you got to sort of play with the ratios to get it right. And then you add other stuff to that. But that I use that all the time at home now as a component of my cocktailing. And it's
Are you drinking Malort cocktails at home regularly?
off and on.
Yeah.
Honestly, yeah.
Go through phases.
I go through phases. But yeah, throw some gin and some Amaro and just different things. There's good Malort cocktails can be done, but it needs obviously to be done carefully.
I'm back.
All right, I'm gonna say $23.99.
What are you gonna say?
$22.99.
Oh,
$29.99. Maybe we're ripping people
that's
off.
almost as expensive as your pizzas.
Almost.
Got him.
Almost.
That's
$29.99.
Yeah, that's
kinda wild.
No comment.
That's a lot. That is a lot. I mean,
Can I check a competitor?
Now, to be
Yeah.
fair, you were talking about how it's more expensive than Evan Williams or whatever.
yes.
But there's a lot of things that taste like Evan Williams.
Yes.
There's only one bottle you can buy in that shop that tastes like Malort.
So
maybe.
it's 25 $5 at
Don't
$24.99
go somewhere
at
else.
other large places.
yeah.
But support the small indie retailer
Gold
folks.
standard.
They're also probably buying it at quantities where
Certainly.
They're probably
getting
buying.
breaks.
They're probably buying more at a time than they made in a year at some points.
yeah, probably. So I mean,
And people. There was a funny sort of detail about Malort from back in the day is that basically no one was ever charged for it, and not that long ago. Well, I guess it's been a while now, but I mean back in 2011, 12, 13.
it's not that long ago. Yeah.
Right. Right.
It was a shot given away.
Yeah, because it's like bartender. No one's gonna pay for this crap,
Right.
So you could walk in and get a round of Malort shots probably for free or quite cheap.
Well, it was also a thing where like the bartender would pour it for you, right? You want to do a shot, sure, and then it would be like Malort with the bartender. Like I think that's how I did my first shot of Malort.
That was a thing, or the. I never realized that people asked for free shots as often as they do. I've talked to a lot of bartenders who say that people, especially celebrating their birthdays, would say, "It's my birthday, give me a free shot," and they would give Malort to them to sort of shoo them away. They'd taste it and they'd say, "Well, that's not what I meant." So, well, there's your free shot. Happy birthday.
Yeah, it also was really cheap, and I think that was also part of why it got so popular. But
Right.
it's not our cheapest shot now.
Right.
I mean, I think we sell Benchmark by the bottle for half the price of Malort, and that was just impossible back in the day.
Right.
So it's changed. But,
I'd rather do a shot of Malort, to be honest.
for twice as much.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think so. I like shooting Malort.
It's an experience,
Yeah. It's an experience.
and it tastes good.
And it tastes good.
It shoots better than a lot of that stuff.
And it's a little lighter. It has less alcohol, so I think that's part of it.
It's like, what is it, 32?
38.
Depends on what vintage we're talking about. What's your ideal vintage of the things you have? Not to run over the ABV question.
I think the ABV's 40.
I think it's a little less. I think it's 35.
Oh, no, I think you're right. I think that sounds right. Yeah,
So you said you have vintages of
I
Buffalo
do.
Malort.
I do have a soft spot for some of those vintages that have a little bit of a thinner body and a little more heat, and that go right to the bitterness instead of the sweet setup. I do like Malort in its current form.
Me too. I think the entry point I had was the thinner, bitter.
Oh, for
hotter.
sure, it definitely was. Yeah. Back when it was a Wild West, and the reason for that variation in the early days was it just depended on the wormwood they could get.
Right.
If the wormwood was real moist and stanky, then you had a nice bitter batch of Malort, and if it was dried out, then it would probably lean a little more vegetal and sort of come across a little thinner because the bitterness wasn't quite kicking in.
Well, Josh, do you have any questions for us? Usually we, you're have you lost your chops? Can you still interview? Have you lost
I
it?
gave you all.
You're out of
I
practice.
asked you about Arcade Fire.
That's true.
I asked you about the cost of your pizzas.
Yes. Wait, did you ask me about it or did you comment on them?
Yeah, no, you're right.
If you lost your touch, you should just take notes on our
Right.
interviewing
Yeah,
techniques.
we're good.
I'm
Prolonged
coming back for
silences.
the pizza.
You'll report on it, at least to me. You'll report back to me about
I
it.
don't know if we want to have this discussion on the air, but I'm going to jump off a little private conversation you and I had, Mike. How are you guys feeling about the state of the beer industry right now, the craft beer industry?
So strong, Josh. Everyone's having a great time.
I had two people this past weekend in different conversations tell me that they thought beer was starting to come back and be cool again. This weekend. It's funny that you would mention that. So I don't know what that means, but 2 people have mentioned it to me.
That's cool.
Yeah, so we'll see. I think they were saying it was being spearheaded by small
Stone.
Saison. Saison was going to be the next
I mean,
brewery. A Saison brewery is going to be the next one to sell for 10 figures.
man, that would be a real dream. I mean, people are showing up at the tap room. Like on premise things are like we're not having a problem there. It's now me trying to trick people into buying saisons at the liquor store.
They get there. Oh. On premise. Got it.
People are enjoying their time in our tap room. However, our distributed sales are not what I projected them to be currently.
Do you think it's because you're putting a lot of effort in your tap room, and it's dividing your attention? I don't want to put words in your mouth. I'm
but,
asking. I don't know.
It's possible. I don't think that I put more attention into trying to sell beer to people and distribute it to them now than I ever have, and it's about the same as it was before we opened the tap room.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's hard to now. What do you make of that? It's weird.
I don't know.
What do you make of that, Josh?
Our prices have gone down for some stuff too, so
I think we're living in
Maybe
an
you need to
extraordinarily
bring them up like pizza.
weird
Check 'em out.
time.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, in the long run, you got to be bullish in the long run, right?
On what,
Beer.
life? Oh, beer?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think everyone has to be bearish in the long run on life. I mean, we're all going to die, right? Let's talk about that, guys.
Survival rates drop to 0 on a long enough timeline, so
Exactly.
but Malort is here forever.
Yeah, right.
I mean, beer's been around for how long?
At least 100 years.
Beer,
Right.
beer ain't going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. That's yeah. So hopefully, by the time I'm old and
by the time.
and have nobody around me, literally nobody,
You'll have Malort and beer.
beer will be cool again, and they'll be like, "Didn't you used to have a beer place?"
Yes, I had the temple.
I had the temple. I had the beer temple, and
Still have. Couldn't let it go.
couldn't let it go. But it'll be like, isn't it the place where nobody pays for beer anymore, and people just go there ironically? Yeah, well,
You have all
Anyway.
that bitter stuff like IPA.
exactly.
What do your kids think
Drinking
about
moon juice
Daddy
now.
owning a beer store?
They just on the positive side of agnostic.
Huh.
So they're fairly neutral,
Really?
but they think it's They do think it's interesting that to them I seem to know everybody.
Yep.
Because we'll go.
You're beer famous.
We'll
You're
go.
You're Chicago
We'll go,
beer
and I'm
famous.
just like, oh, I know him, I know them, I know them, and they're like, of course, you know everybody. We were at we went to wrestling out in Hoffman Estates.
Yeah.
And somebody came up to me and was like, "Are you the guy from the Beer Temple?" And they had seen me from the internal shot, like pictures, like what do you call it, the jumbotron?
Yeah.
Because I'm from the '80s.
I mean, that's a jumbotron.
Yeah, the jumbotron. They could see my big bald head on the jumbotron. It's like, yeah, I saw you from there, and then they saw me on the concourse.
This
And they're like,
industry
"You're from the
does
Beer
that.
Temple."
When I was in Ireland, we were at a natural wine bar, just like not drink not Malort, not drink Guinness for one meal, and my wife and I were the only people in the bar, and then this woman comes and sits down. And I'm like, she looks familiar, and this guy comes and sits down next to her, and I'm like, oh, I know him. And she's like, there's no way you similar thing where like everywhere we go, I'm like, oh, well, that's this guy. I know him from this thing. And I'm like, no, that's Enda. Like he was the brewer at this brewery in China we brewed with. And she's like,
That's crazy.
She's like, there's no way. And so I like Google Enda, the name of the brewery in China. And I'm like, look at this. And it's a picture of him. And she's like, yeah, that's him. And so I go over, I'm like, we're the only 4 people in this bar. I'm like, hey, like, you're Enda, right? And he's like, yeah, and he looks at me kind of quizzically like, oh, you're Mike from Pipeworks, when I was working at Pipeworks when we made this beer with him. And, like, the only person I could possibly have known in all of Ireland just happened to walk into the bar that we were trying to, like, not drink beer at.
Yeah.
And he's a distiller at Teelings, so we got a private tour of Teelings the next morning.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just fun.
Very cool.
Well, yeah, this like industry does that where you just happen to know a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
By the way, I think you made the right call not ordering the hazy IPA called Soup.
Yeah, I saw that and I was like, this is what we're exporting to the world. This is the culture that like our
Oh, we're exporting a lot more than that now.
But like just
sorry world.
Just culturally, yeah. It's like this is what the rest of the world thinks what we're doing is.
Apparently, they're liking it if they're bringing it in from Spain.
I guess so, but now I regret not trying it because like as a curiosity, but at the time I'm like I don't want to.
You know what?
This.
I bet you it tastes pretty good because I've had a bunch of them there. They're pretty.
I
good.
bet it's pretty good. Like
yeah,
and I bet if I like took 2 months off of paying attention to beer here and came back and had a hazy IPA, I'd be like that's pretty good. But like
you know what I had the other day? We had Trillium on and on draft. So I was like, all right, give me like a taster size, like a full taster of it. So it probably ended up being like 3 or 4 ounces or something like that. Damn good beer.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a damn good beer. It was like Fort Point or Congress Street or one of their
Are we hating
normal
on that
ones.
stuff too much? Should we do we need to reassess this?
No, I mean, I think there's a lot of bad ones, but I think that Trillium has always been, I think, one of the ones that I've liked the most. And it was good, man. It was good. I'm trying to look up the show schedule, see what we have coming up next. Looks like something that's not confirmed, so I won't bring it up. But I think we should get the heck out of here.
Yeah.
So we can talk about all the contraband topics that we need to talk about off air for the Patreon only. If you don't know how to get it, then I guess you're not cool enough.
Right. We're gonna do some shots of Malort at the bar.
Yeah, you probably should. Mm-hmm. Josh, thanks for coming. Is there anything you'd like to say before we get on out of here?
Oh, geez. Well, it's nice to chat with you fellas again.
We'll see you in 5 or 6 years.
When the next book comes out. Yep.
Yeah, you read a book, we'll have you on.
I am working on another book, hopefully.
Are
We'll
you?
see. I am.
And you won't say what it is.
Of course
You
not.
wouldn't talk about this one until it was like officially
It's true.
announced.
It's true. But
Even off mic.
No, I told you off mic, actually, in this very room where we're sitting right now. And that's when
yeah.
you told me the story about Sam and the billboards.
Yeah, the billboards. Yes.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, no, hang in there, everybody. Weird days, but you know what? It'll be okay. I think.
Hell yeah.
I think it'll be just fine. Just keep spending $33 for 3 people on pizza, and we'll be fine.
I am coming back in the next 2 weeks to drink some West Coast. No, not West Coast. I'm going to drink some
Drink some
Pilsner.
West Coast.
No, I'm going to drink
Pils?
some Pilsner.
That's better.
And I'm going to
It's
eat
good for
some pizza.
Yeah, man.
And I might even get 2 pizzas. I'm going to spend $66 on pizza.
Yeah.
Because you know what? I'm here to support.
Despite what
And I
Chris
like
said,
pizza.
buy a pizza per person, you bring it home, eat it for a week.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah, make them run out of pizza every week. And then complain about how, like, we are out of pizza.
Too expensive.
Yeah. So expensive no one goes there anymore except they're out of pizzas.
Exactly. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much. Thanks to our guest. Thanks to the Fade Master. He's back. He's
Fade
back.
Master.
He's so excited to fade right now.
Oh, man. He almost pre-faded. It was amazing. But anyway.
Actually, that was more of a sign for us
yeah.
to stop
So long. And we'll...
Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again. Remember this is what we wanted. Remember this is what we said. To never be heard or seen from again.